Welcome to rSlash Entitled Parents, where a woman abandons her infant child. Our next Reddit post is from the Shark Chick. So, my parents are absolute saints. They purchased a 4-bedroom colonial in the early 1980s with property that borders an elementary school. Back in the 1980s, while they were planning on starting a family, this was a brilliant move. They have both a school and a playground basically in their backyard. It's a lovely, sleepy neighborhood in a great district. Fast forward to the early 2000s. My brother and I were already in high school. The school was absolutely overcrowded, and the district decides to save money by cutting busing. If you don't live more than 5 miles from school, you don't get a bus ride, so busing goes from 10 buses to 2. Thus, the stage is set for over 200 cars filled with the worst entitled parents descending on our sleepy neighborhood every day, twice a day. Parking all over the place in oversized SUVs on narrow streets that can barely handle 2 sedans passing each other. Tensions between the neighborhood and the school escalated steadily until the next road over banded together to get one side of road parking during school drop-off and pickup hours. What made it so bad that people sought legal action? Because an ambulance couldn't get down the road to respond to an elderly neighbor's fall due to all these stupid entitled parents basically blocking the road. This shuffled half of those cars onto my parents' street. Tensions between the neighbors and the school parents were at a boiling point. I tried to convince my parents to just move, but the housing bubble had just burst. Now, at some point, someone discovered a back exit to the school building near the other end of our road off a small dead end. I'm not talking a cul-de-sac, but an honest dead end. Cue the swarm of cars to that side of the road. So basically, our neighborhood is an impassable parking lot for an hour around school dismissal. One of our neighbors on the street is a disabled woman. A lovely, sweet, older woman. But she has problems getting around and she has numerous medical appointments. But no problem. She had a slightly over-wide driveway to make it easier for her to get in and out of her car. She came out of her house one afternoon on her way to an appointment, only to find someone had blocked her entire driveway. Fortunately, the driver, our entitled mom in this story, was still in the vehicle. My neighbor approached, gently knocked on the window, and asked the woman to kindly move her vehicle to unblock the driveway. Our entitled parent decided the appropriate response was no. My neighbor tried to explain that she needed to get to a medical appointment. The entitled parent responded with, "And I need to pick up my kid." My neighbor gently reminded her that she was blocking a driveway illegally. "Well, where else am I supposed to park?" My neighbor suggested another street a little further away that had ample parking that time of day, and then walk. The entitled parent was having none of that. She decided to play the "but I'm disabled" card, arguing that she couldn't possibly walk that far. To which my neighbor kindly pointed out that the school had plenty of handicap parking right by the main entrance. And that's when the entitled parent started cussing out my neighbor. In the end, my neighbor had to call the cops. This did not improve relations between the residents and the school. Our next Reddit post is from Greg's Reddit account. I'm sitting in the lunchroom at work eating my soup while watching Fresh Prince on my phone, and some woman who I've never met before enters the lunchroom and without even looking drops their baby carrier, diaper bag, and shopping bags at the table where I'm eating. The baby carrier catches the edge of the bowl, throwing delicious pea soup up into the air and onto the baby carrier, and all over one of the shopping bags which had been set down on a chair. It was actually really impressive, and I'm kind of bummed that no one else saw it happen. Before the pea soup even landed, the lady left the lunchroom to go talk to my boss. I take a look at the baby, and it doesn't look like the baby got any soup on him or her, and he isn't burned, so my good deed for the day is done. I leave the mess and head out the door to grab some McDonald's across the street. I wanted to let my boss know what the entitled mother did, but she was in my boss's office with the doors closed, and I was hungry. I get back, log in, and immediately my supervisor comes over and gives me the "we're not supposed to eat at our desk" talk, and I tell him what happened. He walks over to the lunchroom and peeks inside. He chuckles a little, then turns back to me. "Enjoy your lunch," he says. Once I'm about halfway through with my McChicken, my supervisor tells me to go to the boss's office, so I do. My boss and a very pissed off entitled mother are sitting there. My boss asks why I dumped my soup all over the entitled mother's things. I didn't. "Were you the one eating pea soup in the lunchroom?" "Yeah." "So then how did the entitled mother stuff get covered in pea soup?" Well, I was just sitting there eating, and she walked in and dropped the baby carrier on my food while I was eating it. Soup went everywhere, and I wasn't about to spend the rest of my lunch cleaning it or go the rest of the day without eating because some person I've never met is throwing babies around the lunchroom. So I went across the street and bought another lunch.
He's lying. He did it on purpose, and now all my new clothes are ruined. He could have burned my baby. You're gonna pay me back for everything you destroyed. The carrier, the clothes, and my purse.
What could I possibly gain by dumping soup on your things? And you know what? F it, boss. Just go look under the baby carrier. What's under the baby carrier? Proof that she's lying? The entitled mother gives me the most confused look that I've ever seen someone make. It was a combination of,
"What are you talking about?" and "Why are you doing this to me?"
I think she actually thought that I did damage her stuff on purpose, and she couldn't believe that she could have done something so stupid. Which is funny because there's been an unsupervised infant in the lunchroom for like 30 minutes now. The entitled mother chases after the boss, and I'm following right behind them. When we get to the lunchroom, a small crowd is gathered around the baby, and the boss asks everyone to clear out. The boss didn't even have to move the carrier. Sure enough, under the carrier, halfway sticking out, they find the paper towel I'd put down as a placemat, the plastic utensils I set out, the plate I had under my bowl, and the baggie of saltines I'd brought from home. My boss sighs. Entitled mother, go home.
What about my stuff?
Take your things and go home. As it turns out, she was one of the supervisors who had been on maternity leave since before I started. She had come in because her and the boss were friends, and she wanted to come by and show off all the clothes that she'd bought now that her figure had come back. She blew her entire check on clothes that are now covered in pea soup and can't be returned. She grabbed my half a McChicken on the way out and threw it in the garbage. Alright, so putting a baby down in hot soup is bad enough, but then leaving the baby alone so that you can go complain to a manager is so much worse. I mean, yeah, they're in like an office building in the lunchroom, so it's not exactly like she left it on the curb or something, but still, that's insanely irresponsible. Our next Reddit post is from Salvin Days. First and foremost, I will not be giving you the name of my YouTube channel. I'm not here to plug my channel, but to share a story relating to it. Second, this is part 2 to another story that I told on this Reddit page about 2 years ago. To summarize, my aunt wanted me to upload her son's, my cousin's, video to my channel, which I tried politely telling her no, but she didn't like that response and made a scene about it. So at this point, I'm at about 6,000 subscribers, and things are going great for me on YouTube. People are enjoying my content. Since that interaction 2 years ago, my aunt hadn't really brought up my channel or asked me anything related to it since. I'd seen her a few times in the past 2 years, but we hadn't really interacted that much, just a casual hi here and there. However, about a week ago, my cousin, who's well aware of my YouTube channel, decided one day to Google search me and ended up finding my Reddit user account. And from that, he found the post that I made 2 years ago about my aunt, his mom. Now, he's only 13 years old, so I don't really blame him for this, but of course he ended up showing that post to his mom, and she didn't like that one bit. Later that day I get a call, and this is how the conversation basically went. Hello?
Hey, I just had a question for you.
Sure, what's up?
So, my son found this post online about 2 years ago, and he says that you made it. It talks about the time that I asked you to upload his video to your YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just didn't think that you'd ever see that. I can delete it if you want.
Yeah, you need to delete that. That just seems very inappropriate considering it was a private conversation. What made you think that you could do that?
Well, entitled aunt, you did sort of cross the line when you tried to push that on me, especially when I told you no.
That is no excuse. I think this YouTube channel thing is going to your head.
Going to my head? What do you mean?
I think it's making you act irrationally and mean. I don't think that you should keep doing it anymore.
No offense, entitled aunt, but we haven't really spoken, and you don't know who I am or what I do.
Well, after making a post like that, I can't say that it's making you a kind person. I think maybe you need to hand over your login information for YouTube so I can delete that post.
At this point, I realize that she's confusing Reddit and YouTube as being the same platform. Entitled aunt, that post was made on Reddit. It wasn't posted on YouTube.
Well, I need to log in for both of them because, quite frankly, you shouldn't be on either.
That is not gonna happen. You do realize that I'm 23, right? Why do you even want my channel?
You act like I haven't seen the videos you've posted. They're very inappropriate. This is very immature for someone your age. I'll make it easy and delete it for you.
Do you hear yourself? That is not gonna happen. I don't need your approval.
You know, I could always just email these websites to have you taken off.
That won't work.
Oh, I know it'll work. So, just do me a favor and make this easier on yourself. I don't want to have to get your mother involved.
You know, entitled aunt, just do what you gotta do. I'm done with this conversation.
Oh, I intend to, so watch out.
Yeah, sure. Bye. After I hung up, the first thing that entitled aunt did was call my mom, telling her that I was a menace and a delinquent, and that this YouTube channel was messing with my head. And from what my mom told me later on, she told me that entitled aunt was delusional and out of line. Our next Reddit post is from My Batch of Crazy. So I was at a wedding today that was a mess from the word go. The bride was beautiful, it was hot as hell, and yet she still shone. Her groom was 35 minutes wait to the wedding, but she didn't let that bother her. Their kids kept talking and walking around, and at one point their 3-year-old almost toppled into the pond, but the bride was graceful and all smiles. They said beforehand that this was an unplugged wedding, but her dad and his mom both stood up and took photos interrupting the ceremony. The bride just laughed and carried on. It appeared that it was going to be a perfect day. Then she saw her stepmom. This 70-year-old lady was wearing a white gown. Who does this stuff? Seriously. I was appalled by it, and I even text messaged my husband, who wasn't there, beforehand to tell him. The bride refused to talk to the lady, understandably. The entitled stepmother made a huge deal that my daughter won't talk to me today, and it breaks my heart. The bride was just epic, though. She finally looked over at that 70-year-old entitled woman and said, "Even my 3-year-old knows that you don't make scenes like that in public without repercussions." The entitled mother acted shocked and said,
"Well, I don't know what you mean."
The beautiful bride just said, "You know full well that you don't wear white to a wedding, so sit down, shut up, have fun, or leave." I was impressed. I know it's not as climactic as some stories, but it was amazing to witness in person. Our next Reddit post is from Cave Biker. When my daughter was little, before she started preschool, she would have difficulty breathing after visiting my mother-in-law's house or any place that allowed smoking. This was back in the mid-1980s when you could still smoke in restaurants and such. My wife and I do not smoke. Finally, after one such occasion that my daughter was having problems breathing while at home, it was bad enough that we took her to the clinic. After examining my daughter, the doctor asked us if we smoked. After telling him no, he asked if anyone in our house or extended family did. At the time, my mother-in-law was a heavy smoker, and she was the only person that would smoke inside of our house. The doctor explained that my daughter was showing signs of a mild allergic reaction to secondhand smoke. It was mild enough that treatment wasn't necessary, but we needed to limit or avoid exposing her to people who smoked. My mother-in-law and I have never been on good terms, but it got much worse after I posted no smoking signs inside of our house. She saw them, but said that they didn't apply to her because she was grandma. She usually avoided visiting when I was home because my ex wouldn't stand up to her. Finally, my mother-in-law came to visit while I was home. She came strolling into my house, puffing away. After I asked her politely to put the cigarette out, she refused, saying that she had the right to visit her grandchildren however she wanted. I then asked her politely to leave, and she pretty much ignored me. Now, I need to add something here. I was raised to be polite and to respect others, and that was reinforced by my Marine Corps training. There are some exceptions to me being a nice guy, such as putting my children or wife in danger, as my mother-in-law soon found out. Since she wouldn't take me seriously and she refused to leave, I physically picked her up and took her outside. At the time, she was much heavier than me, but she had finally pushed me over my limits. I sat her down on the driveway next to her car and told her to go home. Then I went back inside and locked the door behind me. My wife didn't say a word, but she was smiling because she knew that I could get away with treating her mother like that. Of course, that wasn't the end of the fight. Our neighbors had been old drinking buddies with my wife's parents, so my mother-in-law stormed over to their house and called the cops on me, claiming assault. It's a small town and I know a lot of the cops around here, but the 2 cops who showed up are cops that I've never met. Since my mother-in-law called them, she met them in the driveway, and by the time they started knocking on the door, they were planning to arrest me. However, I'm not dumb enough to open the door. After they hear my side and the fact that my mother-in-law didn't look roughed up at all, their attitude quickly changed. After showing them my ID, which proved that this was my house, they stepped back from the door to talk a bit. A few minutes later, one cop comes back up the steps to talk to me, while the other one goes to talk to my mother-in-law. His next question actually surprised me. He asked me if I wanted to press charges against my mother-in-law. Breaking and entering, trespassing, assault? Tempting, but no. My wife is an only child, and I'm not going to forbid Grandma from seeing any of my 4 kids, as long as it's on my terms, so no smoking. Instead, I just said that I wanted her off my property and that she'll have to call before coming over. That was rSlash Parents, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.